Relationships. They all have the capacity to help us grow, I think. Hey, hi, I'm Angel. Thanks for stopping by my channel where I aspire to inspire you to reach for and attain your greatest, fullest, happiest, most playful potential. And I'm thinking today about relationships, and you've probably heard that saying, as most of us have, that some people come into your life for a day, a lifetime, a event. I forget how it goes. Anyway, there's a lot of different filters that we think about relationships through. One of my favorites is the chakra system. So I think sometimes we come into a relationship on the root chakra level, and sometimes on the spiritual plane level, and all the chakras in between. So that's a filter that I like to look at relationships through. And whatever filter you're looking at your relationships through, whether it's like familial or chakra oriented or time oriented, they all have potential for improvement, for growth. I think to me, those are all just different kinds of filters for kind of framing our limitless potential for different kinds of relationship in this life. It's really actually one of my favorite things is the infinite potential of relationships, and both with ourself and with the other, the non-self, however we perceive that. I was thinking in particular about male to female relationships, I guess, both parental and romantic or partner type of relationships, and how often people come together at first seeing all this potential and then quickly recreate the same patterns that they had in other relationships that cause dysfunction or that they perceive as dysfunctional, and then end up going something like, this always happens to me, or, you know, I feel fooled. I thought it was one thing, and then I turned out it was another thing. And often, I mean, sometimes there's this blatant, there's some shysters out there. There's some liars. There's people who would intentionally deceive you. However, more often than not, when people feel deceived, when I have felt deceived, more often than not, it hasn't been because anyone was intentionally deceiving me. It was because there was a misalignment of my expectations and then what I was getting out of that relationship. And a lot of times it was because, and still sometimes is because, I am recreating an old pattern through my expectations, through my beliefs. And so I'm bringing that baggage to the relationship table, and then sure enough, I get triggered. I trigger the person because they have their own baggage. Pretty soon, we're off to the end of the relationship. I think this happens in so many potentially beautiful relationships. And so my encouragement to myself and to you is to start to view relationships as this great opportunity to learn about yourself through another. And there's going to be pleasant and unpleasant aspects to that growth process. If you can learn to view it all as a growth process, all as an opportunity, then it will help you enjoy the enjoyable parts even more, and it will help offset the less enjoyable aspects of those parts that are less enjoyable. So I'm trying to think of an example. Just recently, I had a conversation with someone that I have an attraction that I share some of my time with, and it was a great conversation, and then it got interrupted, and he said, I'll call you back in a little while, and then things came up, and he didn't end up calling me back. And he called me the next day and said, hey, sorry, things came up. I ended up, getting distracted, and we'll talk soon. So that was all fine and dandy, except for during that time period between when he said, I'll call you back later, and when he finally called me back a little bit later because things came up, I implemented an old, stale, non-productive, self-limiting belief kind of thought pattern that I have practiced far enough in this life. So it's one of the thought patterns that I'm very aware of now as I've been examining what of my beliefs are really holding me back. And if I pay attention to the words that are running in my head, there'll be this repeating. There are words that have applied to other relationships, and that's how I know, or that I have applied to other relationships, and that's how I know I am imposing an old pattern onto this relationship. So I'm proud of myself because I was able to navigate it fairly well. I did have some ups. Once you're triggered, it's hard to pull yourself out of emotional upset. But what I did was ask my friend for a conversation, and then state in that conversation, there are things that I'm upset about that I want to talk about. However, I'm aware that I'm triggered and emotional right now in a way that's not in alignment with the relationship that we're having and that I'm trying to have. And so I would like to table those questions and just have a pleasant, friendly conversation. I think I said something like, I just need a friendly ear, somebody to say something nice to me right now. And then later, when I'm feeling less wobbly, less emotional, less triggered, there are things I would like to talk about. And that worked really beautifully, because in the past, I would have gone ahead and said some of the things that were bothering me. And the problem with doing that when you're upset is that it just, now you've rebrought that same thing, and then it's legitimately there in the relationship. So I managed to not bring my baggage to the table. I managed to recognize that that was mine. I managed to keep in mind what kind of relationship that I'm trying to have, which is a healthy, open, positively based, growth-minded relationship. So I feel successful. Yay me. And it was a tiny success, but I'm showing you that as an example because I think that I'm not alone in these little struggles, these little subtle and not so subtle struggles with relationships that can have they make or break us in life. Like the stories we tell ourselves and how we deal with our own baggage and the baggage that other people bring to the table. So there's the flip side of the equation. A lot of times you might be having an interaction with someone, and then something that they bring their old baggage to the table, that's their repeating pattern or their belief system that's outdated or that applied to some other thing, some conclusion, false or true, that they drew about some other relationship that then they bring into your relationship. And it's real easy to then get triggered and then end up in this loop where nobody's really sure why they're upset. This is a place I've been far too often. I spent probably the first half of my life not really understanding that I was being triggered and then triggering my partners in various relationships. Relationship with my mother, relationship with my lovers, relationships with people at the store, checking me out. I would often rub somebody, bring some pattern that I was unconsciously bringing to the table, or maybe it's even a positive pattern, but not, sometimes it's a negative pattern, sometimes positive, but in not recognizing that I was clinging to my old patterns, then being unaware of the patterns that the other person was bringing. And so having so many interactions that are just kind of based on somebody being triggered and somebody else being triggered, and there's not really a communication or growth that happens in that. Now, that's okay. That happens a lot, and I think that's necessary to have those in contrast to those moments of growth. And sometimes you just need to get really frustrated and down and in a bad place in order to really decide that enough is enough and that you care about your relationships with yourself and others and how you feel enough to make changes, to improve, to raise your standards and improve your life. That's what I'm doing, and I'm encouraging you to do, because we're all in this together. We're all living this life, co-creating the evolution of everything together. And so it behooves us all. I know that's a weird thing to say. Every time I say it, I'm like, did I say behooves? Yeah, I did. Anyway, it's good for everybody when we focus on good. When you make yourself better, you make me better. When I make myself better, I make you better, potentially. And when we all focus on making our relationships better, then we all get better and all our relationships get better. And I just think there's so much great potential in relationship, both with yourself and with others. that is being missed right now because of these old thought patterns, these limiting beliefs that we're just hanging on to, bringing to the table for no good reason. In fact, I'm working on a course right now called Overcoming Your Limiting Beliefs. And if you're interested, eventually there will be a link to that down below. And in the meantime, there's some links to a couple books I wrote and my eBay store and my Patreon page. So if you would like to support me, I thank you very much. And I hope you do. And if you would like to participate in this community, Team Positivity, leave me a comment. Let me know if you're having some successes or some struggles in your relationships. I'd love to hear about them. If you have some tips or tricks for managing relationships in a positive way, or if you're just frustrated and you'd like some help and you wanna shout out to, like, please help me, you can do that in the comments section. I welcome you. And until next time, peace, positivity, prosperity, productivity, and playfulness.